We're now on Daf Kuf Aleph Amid Beis. We're still in the Sugi of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, and the Gemara asks the following question. For Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Lesle Isa Kol, the whole premise that we've been operating with is that Rabbi Yossi Aglili would say Ein Isa Chal Isa, even if the second Isa is more extensive and it's Kolil, vis-a-vis the first Isa. Vatanya, what are we going to do with the following Brisa? Shabbos v'Yom HaKippurim. What happened if there's an overlap of Yom HaKippurim and Shabbos? Shogag v'Osa Malacha. Now, he violates one of the 39 malachos that are also both on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Now, the question is, does he get two chatos? Let's say he did it inadvertently. Is minayin shechayev al zebi atzmo. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili is going to come up with a drasha to prove that you're chayev for both. And you have to bring two chatos. And how does he see this? Talmud Lomer Shabbos he, Yom HaKippurim hu. So there's an extra words here in the Torah. Diri Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Now, how could it be that he's chayav even for Yom HaKippurim? I understand he's chayav for Shabbos, but Ein Isa Chal Isa. How could the Isa of Yom HaKippurim be Chal? And the answer has to be that it's an Isa Kolel. What does that mean? Like we said before with regard to Kodshim of Ola, that now it introduces an Isar Hanoah. Yom Kippur introduces an Isar Achilu Shasiyah, which didn't exist on Shabbos. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi Aglili can be justified if he holds from Isar Kolel. We just finished saying, based on the Sugi of Tameh, that Rabbi Yossi rejects Isar Kolel. Rabbi Kiva Omer Einu Chayv Alachas. Right, Rabbi Chia will soon see his Chayav for Shabbos, but not for Yom Kippur. Shalach Ravin Mishum de Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Kachatzo Shal Mishnah, the Epoch. We're going to have to switch it around. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Aglili have to be switched around. So the one who said that you're only chayav for one is not Rabbi Akiva, but rather it's Rabbi Yossi Aglili, because Rabbi Yossi Aglili doesn't have Isa Kolel. So therefore, even though Yom HaKippurim is Kolel and expands the scope of the Isa by introducing an Isa Achilu Shasiyah, nevertheless, Ein Isa Chal Isa. Sholach Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yaakov Mishum Rabbi Yochanan L'divrei Rabbi Yossi Haglili L'mai di Afchan. Right, according to this Afchan, which means that we switched around the names, and Rabbi Yossi Haglili holds you only bring one chatos. Shogag b'Shabbos v'hizid b'Yom HaKippurim chayav. Let's say he didn't realize it was Shabbos. He knew it was Yom HaKippurim, and he violated the Shabbos. So as far as Shabbos is concerned, he's a shogeg. Shogeg has to bring a korban chatos. So that makes sense. I think I would add a little bit of lumdus here, if I understand it correctly, that if he was shoging on both Shabbos and Yom HaKippurim, then we apply the principle according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, Ein Isa Chal Isa, even in Isa Kolel. But if he was shoging on Shabbos and he was mazed on Yom HaKippurim, the mazed of Yom HaKippurim doesn't generate a chiyuv chatos, and therefore be chayiv chatos for shgaga of Shabbos. Now we have the flip case. Hazed b'Shabbos, he was aware of the fact that it's Shabbos. V'shogag b'Yom HaKippurim, he didn't realize today was Yom HaKippurim. Pot. Yeah, I'll tell you why he's pot. He can't be chayev for Shabbos because a mazid never brings a korban chatos. You can't bring a korban chatos for a mazid. He was shogeg on Yom HaKippurim, let him bring a chatos for the violation of Yom Kippurim b'shogeg. The answer apparently is that Yom Kippurim cannot be chal on top of Shabbos because ein Isur chal al Isur. And even though Yom Kippurim is an Isur Kolel, Rabbi Yossi Aglili rejects Isur Kolel. But the only question is the following. The Isur Shabbos and Isur Yom Kippurim are both chal simultaneously with sunset. Why should the Isur Shabbos be chal, and then vis-a-vis the Isur Yom Kippurim, we're going to apply the principle of ein Isur chal Isur? I mean, ein Isur chal Isur means the second Isur can't be chal on a pre-existing first Isur, but here they both emerged at the same time. My time. Shabbos kviva kaima Yom Kippurim beidinin kam miboiler. Shabbos is always, every seventh day of the week is automatically kadosh b'kedusha Shabbos and generates an Isur malacha. But Yom Kippurim depends upon Bezdin. Until Bezdin will determine that this is the 10th of Tishrei, it's not Yom Kippur. So therefore, when we compare the two Isurim, Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, Abaye argues that in essence, Shabbos emerges before Yom Kippurim. Not chronologically, but conceptually, because Shabbos is automatically generated, self-generation, whereas Yom Kippur requires the action of Bezdin. So that's like a second kind of Isur. That's chal on the first Isur. And Rabbi Yossi holds ein Isur chal Isur, even in the case of an Isur Kola. But Rava doesn't like it. Amalei Rava says, Tabai, sof shavai v'hadi adodi kasi. I don't care whether or not you need Bezdin in order to sanctify the days Yom Kippurim. Bezdin sanctified already Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, count 10 days later, and immediately with sunset on the 10th of Tishrei, Yom Kippurim emerges. And at that point, if it's Shabbos, Shabbos will emerge. They're both Bahari Adodi, they're both simultaneous. So why would Rabbi Yossi Aglili say that Shabbos is Chal and Yom Kippurim is ein Isur chal Isur cannot be Chal? Elo Amar Rava, now, I'm laughing because Rava is going to reinterpret the whole sugya. This is what I call Ripley's Believe It or Not. Can you have Yom Kippur on a day that's not Yom Kippur? If I would say that publicly, they would throw me out. Elo Amar Rava shmada hava v'sholchu misam d'Yom Kippurim d'ha shaita shabsei. It's interesting. The Goyim, the anti-Semites who want to undermine the Jewish religion, they attack Yom Kippur. They don't attack Shabbos. Maybe they knew what we know today, that Jews will show up on Yom Kippur when they don't show up on Rosh Hashanah or Shabbos or any time. Anyway, my father was a Rav in a shul in Brooklyn. The average Shabbos, we got 300 mispalim. On Yom Kippur, we had 1,300 mispalim. Again, you didn't see them the rest of the year. But again, I don't want to be cynical. At least we saw them on Yom Kippur. Today, they're not even coming on Yom Kippur. Anyway, so there was a shmad. And the shmad declared that if you Jews will observe Yom Kippur at the pain of death, so what happened is that the poskim, the Gdolei Chachamim in Bavel, received a message from Eretz Yisrael. And what they did is they said that whatever day of the week Yom Kippur is meant to fall on, you're going to observe Yom Kippur on Shabbos. 1 out of 7 chances that it might be the right day. Not very good statistics. And how did they therefore circumvent the government and the Shmad? Because they were observing Shabbos, even though they knew they were observing Yom Kippur as well, so to speak. Not a real Yom Kippur, but a quasi Yom Kippur. Is Hamar Karov. So that's what they said. Okay, now we get back to the Mishnah. And the Mishnah records a machlok between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that the Iser Gid Anosh applies even to non-Jews, because the Shivtei Kah at that point were non-Jews before Har Sinai, and they got the Iser of Gid Anosh. Chacham say no, there was no Iser Gid Anosh until Har Sinai, but the Torah just placed it here in this parsha with the angel and so forth and so on to anticipate what's going to happen at Har Sinai. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Amru Lola Rabbi Yehuda. Chachamim argued against Rabbi Yehuda. V'chi nemar al kein lo ochlu b'nei Yaakov. The Chacham are going to make a big deal about the difference between two phrases that in your mind and in my mind are identical. B'nei Yisrael and b'nei Yaakov. Halolo nemar ela b'nei Yisrael. Now, you could call the Shiftei Kah B'nai Yaakov, because biologically they are children of Yaakov. You can't call them B'nai Yisrael. It's only after this entire episode that the Malach changes the name of Yaakov and Lo Yikra Kol Shabel Yisrael. You get the name Yisrael. So the name B'nai Yisrael is reserved for Har Sinai. And therefore, the Iser of Gid Anoshe does not apply until Har Sinai. So how can you, Rabbi Yehuda, assume that Bnei Noach are obligated to observe the law, the prohibition of Gid Anoshe? El b'Sinai demar, el shenichla b'mkomo. Leida me'ezetam neselhem. So the Torah puts it here in this context just to tell you why at Har Sinai they will become prohibited as Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael, in Achilas Gid Anoshe. Masiv Rava, what are you telling me? You're telling me that before Har Sinai it never says Bnei Yisrael? Vayisu Bnei Yisrael as Yaakov Avim. Bnei Yisrael, they're called Bnei Yisrael. And they're taking Yaakov, their father, to burial in Eretz Canaan from Mitzrayim. This is before Matan Torah, my friend. So you see that the name Bnei Yisrael is appropriate before Matan Torah. The Gemara says, Le'achar Maaseh. This is after the Malach already had changed the name of Yaakov to Yisrael, and therefore any pasuk subsequently could call the children of Yaakov by the name Bnei Yisrael. But in the case of Gid Anoshe, which predated the name Yisrael, then the fact that they're called Bnei Yisrael means the Bnei Yisrael of Har Sinai. Amalei Rav Acha Breder Rav Rav Ashi. Me'ahi shaito litzar. Okay, the Torah says Al Kain lo yochlu Bnei Yisrael es Gid Anoshe. When did they become Bnei Yisrael? They become Bnei Yisrael after the Maisa, the episode with the Malach, when Yaakov Avinu becomes Yisrael. So at that point, they should be also Gid Anoshe l'mafreya. Amalei answers v'chi Torahs, v'chi Torah pa'omim nitno, ahi shaita lav shas maisahav, v'lo shas matan Torah. Look, you can have two choices, argues Rashi. Either the Gid Anoshe Isa should emerge at the time that the Malach injured Yaakov Avinu in his thigh, or you have to wait till Har Sinai. It can't be any time in between. So when the Bnei Yisrael took their father's remains down from Mitzrayim to bury him in Eretz Canaan, that's nishta here, nishta in. It doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong there. You can't tell me that that's when the Yisra Gid Anoshe is going to be chal. Tana Rabbanan, we learned to the Brisa, Evrim and Achai doig v'behema chai v'of. Okay, so there are two great Tanoim that hold that Avram and Achai applies to all categories, whether it's Behema, Chaya, and Oaf. But that's not the main Chiddush here, although that is a Chiddush against Reb Meir, we'll see. But rather the Chiddush is Bein Tmeim Bein Tahorim. Even a non-kosher animal is subject to the Isser of Avram and Achai. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eliezer. Now let's keep in mind that a non-kosher animal is prohibited for consumption irrelevant to Avram and Achai. For example, let's say you have the meat of a camel and you just slice off a piece of flesh from the camel and you eat it, you violate the Isser of Behemoth Meah, even though you didn't eat an Aver. So the Isser of Behemoth Meah has nothing to do with Avram and Achai, a full limb from a live creature. So come along the Chachamim and they say, you know what? Avram and Achai has got to be a chidush that would not come under Basar min Achai. And that only applies to Behemoth Tahora. But if you have a Behemoth Meah, then the Basar itself is prohibited. And the Aver, therefore, doesn't add anything to the pre-existing Isser of the flesh of a non-kosher animal. Therefore, by definition, Avram and Achai, argue the Chachamim, could only apply to a kosher animal, where you would be able to eat the animal if you shechted it. The basar itself is mutter, but now you ate before it's shchita an entire limb, then you're chayiv. But that's only because it's a behemoth Torah. Rabbi Yochanan, shnei mikra echad. The root of this machlokas about whether or not Avram and Achai applies to a non-kosher animal is interpreting a pasuk. What does the pasuk say? Rak chazak levilti achol adam ki adam hu nefesh. This is the source for Avram and Achai. How so? So in order to appreciate that, we've got to go on in the Torah and read the last part of the pasuk. V'lo sochal hanefesh im habasar. Now, the beginning of the pasuk talks about dam, and if one eats dam, then he generates a chiv kares. Now the sefer of the same pasuk introduces Avram and Achai. So we're going to take a look here on the top of Kuf Beis. V'lo sochal hanefesh im habasar, which again, that's Avram and Achai. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer, Savri, let's equate dam at the beginning of the pasuk with Avram and Achai at the end of the pasuk. Kol shametu mitzav domo ato mitzuv al evarav. Manitmeim nami hov ato mitzuv al domo ato mitzuv evarav. We have an exact equation between dam at the beginning of the pasuk and Avram and Achai at the end of the pasuk. Anything that's included, any animal that's included in dam min achai, which includes even a non-kosher animal. If you eat the dam of a non-kosher animal, then you're chayiv kares. And that non-kosher animal, which is included in the Isur dam, is therefore ipso facto included in the Isur of Avram and Achai. Rabbanan Savri? No. Lo sochal hanefesh im habasar el habasar lechudei. So first of all, we have hanefesh im habasar. Hanefesh min habasar means when it's alive. Nefesh means a live animal. So lo sochal, don't take the flesh off a live animal. But now the Rabbanan darshan, what about a dead animal? So the Torah is only prohibiting the flesh of the live animal, not the flesh of the dead animal, because the dead animal was subject to shechita. So if you have a kosher animal and you could shecht it, then you're allowed to eat its basa. And whenever you're allowed to eat the basar, then there's an iser of Erev Nachai. But in a case of a behemoth meya, where even after it dies, and even if you'd go ahead and shecht it, the shechita is meaningless, and the basar therefore is asur. Such an animal, which is behemoth meya, is not included in the iser of Erev Nachai. Okay, then that's where we'll stop for today. So Mirza Hashem, tomorrow we'll do Kuf Beis, and then I guess on Tuesday we'll finish the pair, if I have that correct. Okay, wishing you a great day. Thank you so much. I hope Steve is all right.